I'm very happy to be here. I'm very bad with notice. I always everything's last. Now the world went like me. It used to be you could plan things out. Nowadays you can't plan anything. So me being last minute, I'm almost normal now. But so it was a little last minute, and Cheryl put it together, and she did all the work and everything. So
well, thank you to Geula and Howard
for hosting the house
and
all the food and everything. So so thank you very much. So tonight I wanted to speak a little bit first about the new U.S. administration, the Trump administration, and what's happened so far. I don't know if you realize this, but Donald Trump has only been president for a little over 6 weeks, even though it seems like it's been a lot longer, maybe 6 months, some people 6 years, some people maybe 600 years. But it's only really been about 6 weeks, but a lot has happened, as you all know, in those 6 weeks. So I want to talk about a few of the things that have changed. There have been some radical departures, so to speak, between what the Trump administration has already done in these 6 weeks and previous administrations. It's important to point out that, of course, while Donald Trump is, of course, very different than Barack Obama, he's also different than other administrations as well. And we've already seen that in just the first 6 weeks. So I want to talk about 3 things that, so far, President Trump has changed in American policy as it pertains to Israel. And, of course, we don't know where this will all lead. It's a new relationship. Everybody's kind of feeling each other out. The administration is still being formed, even. So, you know, this is not a prophecy here. We don't know exactly what's going to be. But, so again, so far we already have some indications. So number one, as you're probably all aware, President Trump said in the famous news conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said, 1 state, 2 states, whatever's going on, right? Whatever you guys like. Now, it's kind of Trump style to talk that way. It's a little different than maybe other politicians talk, but it was incredibly significant for the past 2 administrations, and really the last 3 administrations, going back to Clinton. The 2-state solution was American policy. It wasn't official necessarily during Clinton's time, but it was very clear that the American government wanted a 2-state solution. So much so that AIPAC and other major Jewish organizations, they themselves have a policy supporting a 2-state solution officially, because they say it goes along with the American administration. So this has been the policy. This is not something that Barack Obama came up with, right? This was already in place when he became president. And now Donald Trump comes in and he says, no, you know, I don't have any loyalty to this policy. It might work, it might not work. You guys figure it out, and we'll go from there. And of course, now Israel has been asking for this, has been wanting this for a long time. Let us figure it out. Don't dictate how things are going to be. Help us find a way to make it work, right? So this has been something Israel's been dreaming of for a long time, to be able to work things out themselves without the interference from the American administration and other governments as well. So this, again, a major, major change. This comes on the heels of the Republican, when the Republican Party made their platform, they also took out, it was a bit foreshadowing, they took out the 2-state solution. Okay, of course we can talk about that again as soon as, obviously, a huge, huge issue. Number 2, well, we see that for a long time, and I know this might sound a little out there, but this is true, the American administration and other governments as well have looked at the Middle East and said, if we can only solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, well, then we can create a utopian situation that will spread throughout the Middle East, and why not the entire world, right? Wouldn't that, Sunnis and Shiites will love each other, there will be no more hunger in Africa, everything will be wonderful. Right? I mean, it's a kind of a Mashiach, kind of Messiah kind of thing. It's interesting. But from a foreign policy point of view, it would seem utterly ridiculous. And yet, this is really the way things have been seen. If we can just solve this one thing, we can fix everything else. Israel has said, no, that sounds a little crazy. Why don't we do a more regional approach? If we can get more moderate Arab states to first of all, make peace with Israel, or even just, openly collaborate with Israel. For example, we know that Israel is helping Saudi Arabia against Iran. This is known information. It's not so secretive, but it's also not so public either, right? Donald Trump comes along and he says, yes, it's not fair. It's not fair that Israel helps the Arab states, and the Arab states don't publicly acknowledge this. If the Arab states would publicly acknowledge this, then there's a better chance for peace. It's like if you go back to the first Gulf War. People remember, I don't know. In the first Gulf War, there were Arab states on the side of the U.S. coalition against Iraq. But once those Arab states came in, Syria and Egypt, Israel had to go out. Right? Israel could not be part of the coalition that fought to get Iraq out of Kuwait because the Arab states couldn't be with Israel at the time. What Donald Trump is saying is, we want the opposite. We want the opposite. Who are we fighting now? Not Saddam Hussein anymore. ISIS, right? ISIS is the problem. Donald Trump has promised to destroy ISIS, right? How are we going to do it? With Arabs, Sunni Arabs, and Israelis. We want Israelis involved openly. Now, whether or not that's exactly a good idea, I don't know. But the idea that the region will work together to also fight the Shiites, right? Iran, and also solve regional issues together. That is a very big departure from previous American administrations that said if we can just solve this one conflict, then we can solve everything. Israel's always said, no, if we can work together with other people that we have issues with, if we can work out, then we can kind of do it. And you see Egypt, for example. Egypt has major problems in the Sinai with ISIS, right? They also have a problem with the fact that their leader is not democratically elected. He took over. Okay, fine. But that's not so crazy in the Middle East. But they have big problems with ISIS in the Sinai. And we all know that Israel is helping them with that, right? And Egypt is not shy about this. Egypt says, yes, we are working with Israel. We have sympathy for the Palestinian situation, but you're just going to have to wait while we deal with the bigger issues here of ISIS and Iran. So that's another huge departure from previous administrations. The third thing is, and this goes back all the way to the founding of the State of Israel. When the State of Israel was founded in 1948, what was the most opposed in America? The U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department was very opposed to the founding of the State of Israel, so much to the point that the Secretary of State at the time threatened to resign if President Truman would recognize Israel. He called his bluff, and he did recognize it, and he didn't resign. But anyway, since that time, the State Department has been a thorn in Israel's side. Now, that doesn't mean that all Secretary of States were that way. There were Secretary of States that were more friendly to Israel. But the actual people who work every day in the State Department were always viewed by Israel as very problematic, as pro-Arab, as, Congress allots the funding for America, but the State Department has a say in exactly how that funding is spent. And Israel always saw that as antagonistic. And as you may be aware, there was recently a Supreme Court case about this famous issue of the passports. I don't know if people are aware. If a child is born in Jerusalem, an American child, on his American passport, it says City Jerusalem, country is left blank. It will not say Israel on the passport. This was actually a Supreme Court case that was just decided in America. Congress, of course, as we all know, holds that the capital of Israel is Jerusalem, but the State Department does not. And they're the ones who make the passports. It's a Supreme Court case, and the Supreme Court ruled that the State Department does have the right to do that, and so that is policy. So if you know anyone who's born in Jerusalem who's American, their passport will not say Israel. It will just say Jerusalem. That's the State Department. President Trump, even before he was elected, was always very clear that once he gets in there, if he doesn't like what's going on in the State Department, He's just going to fire everybody. I actually heard David Friedman, the appointed to be ambassador of America to Israel, I heard him say that as well. He was in Jerusalem, and he said, if we get into the State Department and they give us a hard time, we're just going to fire all of them. Now, of course, at the time, I think even the most ardent Trump supporters thought, okay, that's cute. That's good campaigning. We don't like the State Department, so you're going to fire them all. That's a great idea. But of course, it's not going to happen because, you can't just fire. So as it turns out, numerous people have been fired in the State Department. Not only that, the ones who haven't been fired are going out of their minds because they have been working on projects sometimes for, years and years and years. And under President Obama, a lot of their projects were upgraded and had a lot of people who were working on the Cuba, for example, Cuba. America's policy on Cuba has evolved tremendously under President Obama, right? From being very antagonistic to basically being somewhat friendly. And President Trump is not into that at all. And all those people who work on that are just finding themselves being like, why are we still here? So there are many people quitting. There are just less people there these days. I personally know people who have considered working there, who could have never considered working there before. I can't say who they are, but some of them are quite prominent people, like names that people know, people who live in Israel, working in the U.S. State Department. This would have been impossible. I have a friend that worked in the State Department under Hillary Clinton. She was so horrified she quit and moved to Israel. The State Department has always been a problem, and for whatever reason, President Trump, who is focusing more domestically than internationally, has somewhat declared war on the State Department, at least the people that work there, and the new Secretary of State seems totally okay with that. And I saw recently there was a report that the new Secretary of State of America met with his counterpart from Russia. And as is always the case, apparently, the Russian, foreign minister came with 6 people on each side of him. And the American Secretary of State was him and one other person and a translator. And that was it. Those people just aren't there anymore. They're just gone. Again, from an Israeli point of view, the idea that people who for decades have been tormenting Israel from their very secure jobs in the State Department would just be gone, again, it's just one of those things that is pretty wild, especially in the first 6 months of an administration. I heard a woman on NPR say the other day that she used to work in the State Department, and she said, we all heard what he said, but it's a campaign. Nobody really thought
he would win.
He would win, or if he did win, he would do this. But until now, he has. So these are 3 major things that have happened that are departures from the Obama administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration. Again, some of them going all the way back to the Truman administration. These are pretty radical departures for the U.S. administration to do. Again, it doesn't guarantee anything in the future. We'll talk about one thing that hasn't happened that a lot of people thought was going to happen, which of course is the embassy move. That didn't happen within the first 6 weeks. Some people thought it would happen maybe the first day. That's an issue that's complicated. President Trump has until June whether or not to sign the waiver, right? He has the ability to sign a waiver to postpone the move. That comes in June. That's actually almost coincides exactly with the 50th anniversary of the 6-Day War. I can't tell you what President Trump probably can't even tell you what he's going to do. But it would seem strange for him to sign the waiver right next to the 50th anniversary. It just would seem strange. I think that right now there's like a planning process that's going to go over a certain period of time, and then they're going to have a decision. He's not going to wait till June and just pretend like nothing ever happened. But as far as the embassy thing goes, it is complicated. I think what you have, and this is a constant in the Middle East, is you have a lot of threats that the whole world is going to fall apart if this happens, but you have also the possibility that nothing will happen at all. And this is the reality we live in the Middle East. You know, it's a little different than other places. The Arab side will issue incredible threats. If you go back to 1996, they opened the tunnels, the Western Wall tunnels. I'm sure some people have been there on tour. They opened an exit at the end of the tunnels that you go out of at the end, and there were people who threatened that it would go really badly. There were agreements in place that it wouldn't go very badly, and it went very badly. It was the most deaths from conflict since the Six-Day War. Just to open an exit of a archaeological site. So it's not like it's no chance, but numerous times where Israel has done things like rebuilding of the Waiver synagogue, the one in the old city with the white dome. Have people been? So in the Jewish court, when that was built, the Arabs said, if they build that synagogue, it's going to destroy the whole world. There's going to be riots. It's the beginning of the destruction of Al-Aqsa, and this, that, and the other. And this is very common.
So why don't we build the Beit HaMikdash?
Because the whole world will be destroyed by the. So when it comes to the embassy, there's a lot of Arab leaders, even considered moderate Arab leaders, who are saying, oh, the whole it will be a huge deal, and there'll be strife everywhere. That's possible, but it's also totally possible that nothing will happen. Both are totally possible, and I think now that President Trump has come into office and he's seen that, he now has to kind of, examine it a little more closely and try to figure out, how much risk is involved. So I don't know what's going to happen with the embassy. Obviously, I can just say that based on Trump's huge statements about it, and based on the people who are involved in the administration, it's very difficult to imagine a situation where the embassy doesn't get moved before June. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's sure going to happen. It just seems difficult. It seems difficult to imagine a situation where it doesn't get moved. But you don't know. You don't know. Okay, so that's.
Is there a location already available for them?
So it's interesting. Years ago, if anyone had the terrible experience of having to go to the American Consulate in Jerusalem, it was a blight. It was one of those moments where you went there and you were just like, wow, I'm embarrassed to be an American right now. The old consulate was a total disgrace in so many ways. It was a not nice building. It was in a bad neighborhood. It was just awful. In the last few years, they built a brand new building. It's very nice. It's much more easy to use, and it's much more centrally located. It's also very big, and behind it is another property the U.S. government owns as well. It would be a very nice place for an embassy. There's plenty of room. Seemingly, that's why they bought it. Meaning, there's no reason why the American consulate would need such a large piece of real estate in Jerusalem. So, I mean, they could argue that, I don't know, it was a good buy, but it's strange that the U.S. consulate sits on such a large piece of land. Seemingly, that's where they're planning for it to go. What's interesting is that the idea that if the American embassy moves to Jerusalem, well, theoretically, then many other embassies might move to Jerusalem, which is just something interesting to think about if you know Jerusalem, because, like, I don't know, where would they go? Real estate's through the roof. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's a little cramped. It's very expensive. I mean, I don't know. But I guess they have to figure this out in countries all over the world. But there is the idea that the American move would affect other countries as well.
They're all in Tel Aviv now?
They're all in Tel Aviv, yeah. Yeah, they're all in Tel Aviv. So if America would move, then maybe other countries would move. Certain other countries sure would not move, but other ones might. Smaller countries and things like that. So that remains to be seen. Okay, how was that? That was all right. We're feeling okay. So questions on that? Yes, sir.
The fact that Donald Trump, Ivanka, she promised that 100% that embassy will move to Jerusalem. The fact that she's Jewish now, do you think will help?
I don't know. I mean, every president who's run over the last, including Barack Obama, promised to move the embassy. But if you take his statement and you line them up against Trump's statements, Trump's are in a whole different category. You know, also, George W. Bush also promised to move the embassy. Sure, of course. And he never did it. He had 8 years. He signed the waiver every time. Right? But again, if you take his statements and you put it next to Trump's statements and Trump's friends' statements, whereas, like Ivanka Trump, it's his daughter, but the people associated with him have all made these, you know, very 100% statements. Whereas with the other ones, you know, they said it and that was the deal and they moved on. With Trump, it's been a whole presentation. The fact that she's Jewish, you know, the fact that the President of the United States' daughter is Jewish is just so out there that and observant, you know, and openly observant. I don't think we can even grasp what that is going to be like. I mean, you know, every year the White House has a Hanukkah party, and that's the day for the White House to be Jewish, you know. But like now they're gonna have all the holidays, like all of them. You know, it's like, and like Shabbat every week. I mean, it's one of those things where we're all gonna have to kind of like see how this plays out. But like, there's never been anything remotely similar.
Even kosher one of the kitchens in the White House.
Right, because the kids have to eat. I mean, it's just one of those situations where, you know, no matter how long we've been alive and watching things like this, we've never had anything similar to the president's daughter being a Shabbat observant Jew. That's just beyond anything we could ever really have thought of. So it remains to be seen. I don't think the kid's going to dress up for Purim or walk through the way. I mean, you know, they go to Jewish school. It's a whole thing. It's the whole thing. So how much influence her religion is going to have on President Trump? You know, President Trump, before he was president, of course, you know, real estate in New York. So, without having to be too stereotypical, there's a lot of Jews involved with real estate in New York. So, he's been around Jews, you know, both his lawyers, major lawyers are observant Jews. President Trump is very familiar with the Jewish community, has made numerous charitable donations to Jewish causes over the years. Like I said, Bill Clinton likes Jewish girls, that's clear. But, Bill Clinton had a very warm relationship with the Jewish community. You know, Bill Clinton seemed to, you know, enjoy participating in Jewish things. But this is just a whole different level. This is a man who's been working with Jews his entire life. I mean, he's from Jamaicas Estates. Jamaicas Estates is like a Jewish neighborhood. You know, he's just surrounded by Jews, and not just Jews. He's surrounded by committed Jews. You know, people who are often observant, and even if they're not observant, they're like, you know, they're proud Jews, which is a different. You know, a lot of administrations have Jews in them, but they happen to have Jews in them. It's something that just kind of happens, you know? With President Trump, it almost seems like it's kind of planned out that, you know, he's into this thing. Okay, you know, we can't say what's going to be. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, whether it's Russia, whether it's ISIS, you know, whether it's the economy. There's a lot of stuff going on, obviously. But it's such an extreme situation. I mean, President Trump is a bit of an extreme person to begin with, obviously, but it's such an extreme situation that if you were to draw up your like ideal situation, maybe you wouldn't pick Trump as the personality, but with the personal details, the Jewish daughter, the Jewish friends, the Jewish lawyers, I don't know, you get the chills a little bit. I don't know, it's a little extreme. I mean, President Trump has donated his own money to some of the most right-wing causes. And of course, that's some of his connections with his lawyers, with the Jewish community, of course. But still, he did it.
Like what? Like what?
Like he's donated $10,000 to Beit El. I mean, Beit El is not, you know, a moderate. I mean, it's not a crazy place. Don't get me wrong. But Beit El is a Jewish community next to Ramallah. If you've ever been there, you can't get there by accident. Like, you have to drive through some pretty interesting stuff to get to Beit El. And President Trump donated $10,000. Now, $10,000 is maybe not a lot of money for him like it is for us, but it's more than anyone else has ever donated, who's now President of the United States, probably by approximately $10,000. So, and President Trump's been involved with these things for years. So, again, because of his connections, I don't think he's planning to live in Beit El, but it's just one of those things where he's just in a different place than other people have been.